Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 805 Uncensored podcast, where we talk politics, history, music, philosophy, and more. Tonight on the pod, I'm honored to host two of the four band members from The Last Point, a skate punk band from the Santa Barbara area. Joined with me is the bassist, vocalist Josh Parkhurst, and drummer Matt Glasgow. Welcome, guys. How are you? Thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah,
awesome. Thanks for having us. It's a pleasure.
Anytime. It's awesome to talk to musicians on the podcast, as always, but especially ones that hail from the 805. So,
right.
Yeah.
And we're a true... Yeah. And we are a true 805 band as well. We pretty much cover the whole area code, honestly, in terms of our members. We've currently a couple of us in Santa Barbara. Matt, he's in Carpinteria. And then the other member, he's in Ventura.
That's fucking awesome. You guys are right up there. I'm right in Ventura County in Camarillo, so we're super local.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. Yeah. And actually, we have another member in Simi Valley.
Oh yeah, I know Simi super well.
Yeah, we are. We're fast forwarding, jumping so far ahead, but we are in the process of transition and having a new team member come aboard. And
that's where I have to slow my roll because, like I was saying earlier, I did mushrooms today, and I'm on that. Like I'm just shit just comes out of my mouth right now.
Yeah. Oh, that's fucking awesome, man. So let me ask you guys this question. You call yourself a skate punk band, so can you kind of talk about what that means? How does that differ from other variations within punk?
Matt, you take that one, and I'll follow.
You know, it's kind of it's weird actually. Like I grew up in the 80s, 90s, whatever, and punk to us was just punk. Like, I mean, there wasn't so many classifications. Like, so what boiled us down to like skate punk is it seems like that genre is more based around like the 90s theme of punk rock. Like, so, I mean, nowadays, like punk could be like people take punk as like, gnarly mohawks and like chains and spikes and fire and danger or whatever, which fuck, that's awesome. That's great. That's what we all grew up like, loving the danger part of it or whatever, which it's tamed down quite a bit, but I don't know, that just seemed to be like where we fit best in the genres of things.
Yeah. And I think also an easy corollary with that is some of the skateboarding video games. If you look at some of those first like Tony Hawk Pro Skater games, couple versions, if you look at those soundtracks across the board, that style of punk they were already bedfellows, but became more popularized and more like layman's terms of like, okay, I can see that's there. So I think that's another, part of it. Are
you guys skaters yourselves?
I used to skate a lot. Yeah. But now, 40 years old and 6'8", the ground is a lot further than it used to be.
Right.
And things don't heal as quickly as they used to. I still get out and skate. Like,
you know what they say, Father Time is undefeated.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Exactly. And still.
Always will.
Right,
Yeah, when I was younger, too,
I get out.
Yeah, he does get out. No, when I was younger, I would just cruise. I didn't know any tricks, couldn't do any of that kind of stuff, but just could roll around a little bit with my homies that were doing stuff. And then it was, I'm a musician and my hands are incredibly valuable. So, I was like, you fall down just a couple of times and you know how much that hurts. And really what sealed the deal for me, where I don't think I've ever stepped on a skateboard ever since then, was in college, was in music school. And at the park one day, and a friend of mine who was a guitar major was rolling around. He was trying to jump and clear a short little bench, and he caught the toes and kicked his feet back out. So he ends up Supermaning, right?
Oh.
And smashes his hands, broke both of his hands, broke one of his wrists, ended up with like potential, like, I think he has minimal nerve damage in one of them, and like he lost like a year and a half of school and was like walking around with hands in casts and like couldn't move and like
and
can't feed
his mom
himself.
wipe ass, probably.
Well, his housemates and his girlfriend and stuff at the time. But no, I mean for real, like
it's got to be embarrassing.
Help feed you and help you get dressed and tie your shoes, and I mean, and that was like, yeah, I'm money makers, baby. We're not going to screw these guys up.
Yeah, I was.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because that's about where I was too. Like with that, once all the full-time touring and everything kicked into place, it was like if I fall and something happens, like it's pretty devastating at that point.
I can kind of relate, not in terms of like being a musician, but I was a baseball player. And so I never got into skateboarding. I had friends that did it, but I was just always fucking terrified of getting injured and not being able to play.
Yep.
So I just didn't do it.
Yeah. And I love skateboarding. I think it's some of the coolest stuff, and like watch
for
it
sure.
all day long and a fan. But you start naming tricks and whatnot. I mean, you might as well be point out parts of an engine. And I mean, you're speaking a foreign language to me. I don't know what you're talking. It looks cool. He did that thing. He jumped real high. I don't know. I mean, and again, I'm not a poser, man. I like watching it, but doesn't mean I know a whole lot about it.
Yeah. Well, and the tricks nowadays are like have gone so far and above like anything like I could even attempt to do. I'll watch.
Yeah.
You have your fun time.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
So let me ask you guys about the band name. First of all, what inspired you to form the band, and how did you settle upon the name?
Well, the start of this band honestly it came out of stagnation. I was at a point where I had not been in a band for a few years. One of our guitar players, also same boat. We had not been in a band, hadn't been in a band for quite a few years, and just kind of got to a point where like, hey, let's write some songs. Let's just sit down together and write some music just in the kitchen with acoustic guitars, and like just to write and see what happens, because we were at a point where it had been too long without music in our lives, me especially. And so that was really just the exact initiation. And then, the steps along the way, auditioning people, meeting Matt and getting him involved as our drummer. And, now here we are a couple years later. So that's like the literal, how did it start? Just two guitars in a kitchen, me on bass and, TJ on the guitar, just in the kitchen, writing stuff. And then the name, honestly came out of a marathon attempt to name our band. You come up with a list of names that everybody in the band thinks is cool and that you like. Of course, every one of those names is already taken.
Right.
So then you go to your B list where you're like, well, these aren't so bad, and let's see if they're taken. And so it was just that long process back and forth in a group text, of the band. And it literally just one day, we were firing off a couple of texts back and forth, throwing a couple random names in there. And it just was like, how about this version? And it's like, oh, yeah, let's see if it wasn't taken. Bam, ran with it. And here we are.
Super rad. Wow.
It was just trying to find a name that wasn't taken that we all could agree upon.
Sounds like a really organic process. That's really cool.
And to be fair, I mean, we did have parameters. Like when we were coming up with it, we're like, okay, we either going to have like a single word or like a 2-word name. We didn't want to do like a 3 or 4, combination of words beyond that. We at least like had a couple of minimal parameters for ourselves. But no, yeah, as you said, beyond that, it was a fairly organic process. Yeah.
Does it have anything to do with Santa Barbara specifically, like Point Conception or anything like that?
It could.
No, it could. I mean, it possibly could. But Josh and TJ were both from New York originally, and we're transplants here. So Point Conception is the cut. Yeah.
So yeah, just like a song, like those lyrics could be any number of different things. There's what I may have wrote it, and then there's what did you take from it, and
right.
All could
take
be correct.
As you will.
Yeah, I mean, I'm wearing a Nirvana shirt, and Kurt Cobain would famously be like, people fucking read way too much into my lyrics, man.
Yeah, right? and great band, by the way, Nirvana. Absolutely one of those first gateway bands for me. Again, no shame in it, like pridefully. I mean, that were a rad band. And, one of those, my parents were pretty strict, so it took me a while to be able to get into things, a few more years than it took for others. So it was like, oh, they're on the radio. And then I was allowed to buy their CDs because, well, if they're on the radio, it's not so bad. And, if only they knew. If only they knew.
Yeah, man,
you
I
bought
love
the
grunge.
explicit version.
Do you guys come from musical or artistic families in general?
My super odd. Like my grandfather was a musician and a carpenter. I never met him, and those are both my professions. Like it seems like something that ran in the blood there. But as far as musical family, no, I wouldn't say anybody in my family is very musical. I just play.
Yeah.
I play the drums, man. I'm not very musically talented either. I just beat shit with sticks.
Shut the fuck up.
So,
I know, right? I know.
Like anybody could do that.
I can't. That's bad. I can't. No, I sit down behind that drum kit, and it's the most rudimentary and sad display of drumming. Oh, it's bad. But I did come
any music talent. I've never had any music talent myself.
Do you have any other artistic outlets or mediums you like to dabble in?
I like to write.
There you go.
Yeah,
that's cool.
I do podcasting.
And this, of course, is but you know what I'm saying, like more music, sculpting, painting, writing, poetry.
Yeah, I would probably say like creative writing.
Neat, awesome.
That's awesome.
And now all you gotta do now is just start selling that shit to a band, man. You a ghostwriter. Yeah.
Maybe if somebody would buy it.
Right. Well, like I said, I actually did come from a music family. I'm multi-generational musicians in my family. My grandfather, my father, my aunt, an older cousin from another uncle. So all I got. My dad has two siblings, so someone from each of those. My mom briefly played music when she was younger, but never really pursued it or excelled too much. And then myself. So yeah, like I said, third generation, but there were also a couple sidebars that were ahead of me as well. When I went to college for 3 semesters, it was to a music school. It was to a private university for music, and was pursuing a degree in that before I decided that school was no longer for me, and decided to leave school and do something else.
It's good that you figured that out relatively early. Some people figure it out way too late.
Yeah.
And spend way too much money.
Yeah. I mean, admittedly, like I wasn't that enthusiastic going into college as it was. I mean, I could have had a higher GPA if I did homework, but I was like, I see this nonsense. I ain't doing that.
Right.
Well, all that, so it's like, I
feel like seeing through the bullshit is like half the game, though.
Oh, yeah, man. It started, like I said, listening to punk rock and hardcore in 14, 15, 16, and then you start challenging stuff in public education, and, man, you start getting sent out of classrooms real quick.
This kid's going to be a problem. We better give him some medication.
Thankfully, no. But, I mean, I was the problem guy because I was not to sound big in britches, but like too smart for my own good at that age. It wasn't so much like always like problem, but like, okay, like, let's not talk about that. We got to teach these other kids. Like, no, we're not going to do, like, we'll talk later. But I was an upstart, like a lot,
like advanced intellectually for your age.
Well, I would be questioning stuff. You know what I mean? Like you are with the content. Asking questions that public educators were not comfortable having asked in the classrooms with the rest of the students, and like directly challenging them. And then when I wouldn't be I would ask legitimate questions about what they were teaching, but in the sense of like, hey, is this really accurate? And what you're presenting in text versus reality, right? Yeah. Or things like that, and wouldn't acknowledge the question, would just refuse and try to continue with a lecture. I'm obstinate. I would, at that point, it's a bit less I want to learn something and like I'm intentionally being disruptive, because no, you're not gonna blow over this. My parents, my family's tax dollars, everyone's tax dollars go to running this system, to having to, you have a job. Your job is to teach me. I'm demanding that you teach me. And you're saying, I'm not going to teach you. I'm going to just ignore what you want to know and go here. And then it's like, you can come after class and we'll talk. I'm like, no, other people they deserve this information. We're not going to have a private conversation where you're just going to patronize the few things I want to know about. Oh, and by the way, I have 4 other school activities that I'm doing after school. I don't have time for this. This is my time to learn, and you're supposed to be teaching me. You get sent out of the classroom real quick at that point.
Yeah.
You start hanging out in the principal's office a lot more. And
that's fucking badass, dude.
And they look at you because they know you're not, they know you're intelligent. They know you're like, they're kind of like, why are you doing this to me? It's not like a true, like you're starting fights or like being truly like problematic in an educational setting. Like argument, I was being a thorn, and hey, punker hardcore, like I said, and a young kid, like, man, that's what happens.
Hey, being challenged intellectually is some pretty deep shit. Like,
I had a teacher, and then having a teacher who wasn't, I never even had a class with, that was like, you're somebody that if there was the option to go to like a specialized school that focuses on more of like arts, and creative, like those types of like school, like more private or charter schools, that's like, oh man, if you had the opportunity to do that, that would have been the perfect environment for you. So yeah, in terms of, like I said, sorry, I got long-winded there. A little opinion about public education and some of my bumps in the road. Yeah,
no worries. It's all super on point.
I mean, Matt and I both, though, working class families, public education came up through it,
Yeah.
Few notches
so much, in fact, I knew right away, like pretty much in my sophomore and junior year, that I didn't think I was going to go to college. It wasn't like, not just for the fact that it was like a lot of money, like, but our city college here, like, was still like a pay tuition, you know what I mean? And it was like, well, like shit, like I don't think like yes, I'm fairly intelligent, but not in the sense of like book smart. Like, I'm creative in all aspects. Like I do woodworking, like, and give me a medium in my hands and I can like work with it. But book smart's like, I knew I'd be wasting money. Like we had talked about previously, like the whole bit.
Right.
And so senior year is when I actually found drums, and it like clicked so hard to me. Like, I started playing in a band that was playing like everybody's parties on the weekends, and started playing like this place that was called the Living Room, like out in Goleta. And at the end of the senior year, everybody was going to college, and there was a punk band that was like, hey, so that was a ska band, by the way, in my high school band. Mm-hmm. And then there was a punk band that was like, we need a drummer and we're going on tour. And I was like, well, fuck, that's like no college for me then. I'm going on tour. And like, I slept on floors and shit and no means made any money, but I had the time of my life, and like came back to, back home, and between tours was smart enough to get a job at doing woodworking. And now I make way more money than most of my friends that spent a shit ton of time and money going to college. Like, so it's just crazy that like, there is, if you send somebody like into an aspect of life that like really challenges them in like the way that they're like wanting to be challenged, mm-hmm. like I think like that's the bigger, mm-hmm. goal than sticking them into like, you have to go to college, you have to, right. do all this shit with credits and like, degrees that you don't even need for a job that you don't want. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just crazy.
We frequently force college on people in America, and I've talked about it in previous podcasts, how fucking stupid it is.
And we make them fucking pay for it.
Yeah. And it's the reality is college is not for everyone, as you guys have perfectly explained.
Not at all. You know what I mean? And like I said, it's forced upon so many people, so, so unnecessarily. And I mean, but it's a bigger part of that. If, forcing it upon you, and then you're in debt, and then you feel more obligated to get into said system. And then here we are, you're in the churn, like,
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, exactly. I wanted to ask you guys about your bands and musicians that have influenced you in your music and what you admire the most about them.
A good one.
Can you see that one? That's my biggest influence.
RKL?
RKL is my biggest influence. Lagwagon is another huge influence, but again, it's like just some of the similar members that like were just ultra talented, like in my mind, and got to see a lot of that, like with growing up in that time and era when they were small, they weren't like huge yet, you know, and like I was able to see them in like small capacity venues and stuff, and like it just blew my mind, like the intensity of RKL and like their passion of music and everything, and like it was just like I don't know, as a teenager, it was like it just blew your mind, you know what I mean? Like how like gnarly these guys were, like so it just kind of had always been a huge influence to me. Like the raw power of RKL was intense.
Sweet.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, God, I mean, you could list a mile long, probably from both of us, but like, in terms of one of the first couple, like similar to Matt, some of the first couple bands that really like blew me away and just drastically altered the direction of my life in terms of music interest, you know, like those first couple of bands that still to this day are like some of my favorites. Rancid, AFI, Bad Religion. Mm-hmm. Those are three big heavy hitters that you know, as a person. And
obviously, No Effects.
Oh, of course. I mean, they're No Effects. I mean, huge. I mean, you know, huge bands that still. I would say
Fat Records. Period. That's a huge like influence.
Fat Records, Epitaph Records, stuff on No Idea, you know, stuff on Revelation. You know, there's so much. But so those are some of those bands, like Matt, like those were the first ones that really like woke up my eyes to life, and still to this day. And then musically, as a musician, some of those bands also incredibly influential on me as a musician, how I play, how I write. But a band that's not in the punk genre that I have to mention it anytime I get asked this question. You can see over my shoulder right here, a little cover art, big cardboard for the Mars Volta, their second album, Francis the Mute. That's what that's for. But the band, the Mars Volta, when they came out, I mean, I'm not a huge fan of At the Drive-In. Just that combo didn't really ring my fancy. However, the Mars Volta blew me away. And I credit that band and listening to that band at the point of my life when they came out and I was listening to them, that so changed how I play as a bassist. And I was able to gain a whole new respect and understanding of what it meant to be the rhythm section, like a drummer and a bass player being the you know, the engine, just running the machine, you know? And so I just totally opened my ears up to a lot of other types of music that up to that point I hadn't listened to. I mean, I was always into kind of like rap and hip hop, but blew the doors open to where I was listening to so much more rap and hip hop. And I love a lot of that stuff. So I listen to my daily rotation, you know what I mean? So that's, like I said, personal influences and music influences. Those are some big ones for me.
Dope.
I like Katy Perry.
Yeah, she's really good. She's a loke. She's a loke.
She's a friend of mine.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, she's a good family friend. Fucking sweetheart.
That's pretty cool. What do you guys... Actually, no, sorry. I skipped one. Would you guys agree that it is paramount to learn, study, and understand old music and music history?
Absolutely.
And if so, why?
Absolutely.
Well,
I think there you go.
I mean,
yes, Matt, why first?
Yeah, I for me, it's a matter of respect. Like, I mean, there's been so many like musicians that paved the way for where music's at today. Like, it's just a total matter of respect for me.
I would say just across the board, just the word history. regardless of context, musical history, cultural history, artistic history, like I admit, I wish I had been more appreciative of learning history when I was younger. As I am now a little more older, I'm like, man, I really I want to know about the stuff that happened and be more informed accurately of history. So I would say, regardless of an interest, that you may have, like if you have a true passion for it and a real affinity for it beyond just something casual, then I think you naturally end up wanting to like it kind of go like hand in hand with your respect. Like you have such a connection to it. You're like, yeah, I want to know more. I want to know where this came from or why this is significant or where this came from or who started this or like, because it kind of resonates with you in a different way. So I think a lot of people there, of course, I'm sure some people may not give as much appreciation as one person subjectively may say they deserve, but yeah, I think, like I said, if you have an affinity for something, you're going to kind of naturally be curious about where, the chicken or the egg, right? Kind of an analogy, I guess. Yeah, definitely important.
Yeah, well, really well said, man. What do you guys enjoy the most about being musicians in general?
Wow, I don't
know. That's a good question.
That's interesting.
I like all aspects, like encompassing, but to narrow it down, like I don't know. That's a really hard one. Like I really like just for me, like you can tune out the world kind of, and just get lost in your own like little whatever it is. Like to me, it just kind of it's a huge release. Like, so I could be through any emotion and like, if I'm happy, like I'll fucking tear through some drums and like, it's just awesome. Like, if I'm sad, I can tear through some drums and like, get some of that, emotion out. Similar with anger, you beat some drums and get that out. Like,
right.
It's just a huge release.
Floods the serotonin receptors.
Oh yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I would agree with everything Matt says in terms of what music, obviously what it can do for you and all of that. And but man, the way you phrase that's such a poignant question. What is my, okay.
And then similar to like, listening.
I would say here's the best answer I can come up with because man, you caught me good. That's such an insightful, like you could have a whole conversation just about that. Like it's great. But I think not only just as a musician, but then in the music, there's a timelessness, and not to be cliche, like, oh, my music will live on forever. I'm like, it's kind of real though. Like, not only do you have that where it's like, okay, boom, that thing got recorded, that got put out, and it's now out there forever, right? Mm-hmm. But it's also a benchmark. It's also that song happened at this point of the life. That song happened at this point in your life. As Matt said, were you happy, sad, mad? What was going on? Something superficial or something super deep, like wrecking your whole world, And there's that timelessness because as we change and our memories change and our telling of our experiences changes, the music holds us true. The music is the like infinite, like, but that's what it really was then in that moment, the technology, even on one part of it combined with what the band and the person was. So I think, there's the ability to share that about yourself, about oneself, and to have it be such a notable benchmark in your history of existence. I think that's it's in a unique way that both, music as well as other forms of art, time capsule, I guess, kind of another thing I'm floating around, like boom, that moment's captured there forever. And then, in a way that a lot of other things we experience aren't, that a photograph doesn't necessarily capture, like that a painting doesn't necessarily capture, or things that are still legitimate that are and are timeless. But there's something different, I think, in music, and that being able to leave that, I think, is what's uniquely special about being a musician.
Like the reflections that you can leave behind, kind of.
Yeah, and the fact that it is so unique outside of other forms of art. I think
Yeah, and
that
not many people at all can fucking call themselves musicians.
Yeah, and then like even taking it to the next step, it's, oh my gosh, Matt, we've had this conversation how many times even recently, like the idea of like there's also two folds to that with any medium. Okay, you can be a musician, you could be a sculptor, you could be a painter, but are you also an artist? And I mean that in the sense of like, you could shred on guitar, be in a good band, write some tunes, but does it really like mean like a really big deal? Like if you didn't have it, would you be a totally different person and like arguably not as good of a life? Or is it just something you're really good at doing and you're a hired gun, or you could do it as, the fulfillment, so there's the deeper level of an artist and being able to have
to create.
The need for creation, it really, and then it being the music is that form of creation, or the difference are like other mediums of form. I always fear I'm sounding dismissive, but I don't mean to be at all in any way, shape, or form. But it's differences,
That's a great point. I've never heard anybody put it like that.
Yeah, so it's not, so the musician part of it, yeah, like that can be challenging enough to really just practically learn an instrument, play, and be considered a musician or whatever. But then the next tier of that, and then there's artists who are also musicians. Not necessarily every musician is a true artist, and solely my opinion. Disclaimer, like all my opinion only, and we all got ours, and right. So it's
I think it's a really good point.
That dynamic, Matt and I have had this conversation quite a bit, and about discussing that dynamic is things that have been going on in my life in the last like year, and kind of involving that discussion and sharing that with Matt, and we're very much two peas in a pod like that.
Right on. How well do you guys handle traveling, being away from your house and long nights at shows?
Pretty well. Matt, I feel like, I mean, I have a family, like, but before family, like, it was like I took to it like a fish of water. It was like my body was, yeah, exactly. Like my body just loves like the whole, traveling aspect of like, being out there. Like I have to, it's like the whole, like Neanderthal, like, you gotta see what's next, like what's over that hill. Okay, well, what's over that hill? Like I just love like seeing like
how adventurous it is.
Miles, man. Like I just love traveling. But then you get to do it playing music. That's like the best thing in the world. Like you get to see the world doing your favorite thing in the world. Like it's super rad. And now that I have a family, I took quite a bit of time off. About 10, 12 years to be with my family, like as they were growing and whatever, like wanted to be a father, and now they have been like, dude, like all these stories that you had, like why don't you do that anymore? And like I was like, well, shit, you're right, kid, like and my wife was like, you've never been the same since you stopped touring and we're in bands. And so she was really encouraging as well, which was fucking amazing. And so, yeah, I jumped out with like one of the first things I could, get my hands in. And it happened to be with Josh and TJ. And like Josh and I just pretty much clicked pretty well, like right off the bat. Like I have a pretty good sense of character. And he seemed like a fucking great guy, like right off the bat. I knew TJ already from a previous band I was in. I helped him out with some years before that. So it was kind of like just jumping right back in the saddle, like riding again. It just felt super good. So yeah, I love it. I handle it well.
Fuck yeah. Super rad.
I like traveling too. Like I specifically like road tripping. Like I've always like just get in a car, driving, like doesn't bother me. You know what I mean? By myself, or with a crew of people or whatever. Like I just enjoy being on the road. From a kid too, when I was younger, parents would pack up, like have to drive, like we couldn't afford to fly anywhere, so we'd have to we'd be hauling an RV somewhere, just go camping somewhere. So like in the road as a kid, reading books, looking out the window, that's all there is to do, So yeah, I love being on the road just in general. Traveling, going places is good. And then, to reiterate, Matt, I mean, I'm getting to do it and play shows and do all this. Yeah. No, of course, you get a little stiff and a little achy here and there, but I mean, like you said, no pain, no gain, right? Is the old saying, a little bit of, my back being a little bit sore, but to go out and play a bunch of shows and have a good time at places that I otherwise maybe have never been to or wouldn't have gone to. Yeah, it's great. And we're, we don't we're not partiers really, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we have that issue when we're on the road. I mean, the main reason we're on the road is we're here to play music, and we're going to have a great time playing music and having this adventure, not that we need to be fucked up the whole time. You know what I mean? So for it's more it's just easy. We're just.
I think Matt's frozen, by the way.
What'd he do? He'll come back to life.
Yeah.
We'll
sorry, you were saying.
Oh yeah, so like I said, I like being on the road as well. So I take to it well, and it's, of course, any band, nothing's gonna be perfect all the time. You're gonna have moments where disagreements, you're a little, or somebody's extra stinky or whatever.
Yeah.
But again, it's just that it's kind of the testament of all right, do you really want to do this, and you're in it to do it, or are you just gonna worry about the the stuff that doesn't matter? And shit, that mentality transcends life, right?
Yeah, absolutely. What's the greatest show each of you guys ever played at, and what was the most memorable aspect about the performance?
Ooh, I got mine's easy. I've been privileged and been able to open for a lot of really big time bands. So there's any number of them that would be equally cool just because we're getting the chance to open for this band at the show, right? But no, one of my absolutely best ones there are was here years ago in Santa Barbara. There was a venue called the Coach House. Prior to that, it was Emerald City. I can't remember what was prior to that. It was rolled over a couple times. Anyways, it was the Suicide Machines were playing, and they had just put out their records on Side One Dummy, so it was a label tour. So it was Side One Dummy putting out their band. So it was Suicide Machines, Against All Authority, and The Code. Mm-hmm. And I saw the advert in the newspaper, the little the newspaper printout that showed the little show billet, that used to be back where venues would post, and saw they were coming. I was like, oh my God, this is nuts. So I randomly emailed the promoter, and they're like, can we open? And they're like, yeah, sure. Easiest thing ever. Never happened again in the world. So fast forward, end of the show, right? Mm-hmm. They're doing their set. Suicide Machines are doing their set, and they're getting ready to do their 2-song encore. Now, they have a song on their first album that has a trombone part. And I learned that on trumpet. And in the start of the day, I was like, hey, I learned this part. Do you guys play the song? I'll play it with you on stage, trying to be all fancy, right? And they're like, no, we don't play that anymore. It's too old, blah, 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 blah. I was like, aw. I was all bummed out. Damn it.
Right.
And so end of the night, though, I was like, you know what? I don't care. I'm going to see if I can force this to happen. That obstinate kid that was about to get kicked out of class came right back around again. I'm going to try this out and see what happens. So I go to the van. I get my trumpet. I come back in. I'm on the side of the stage. They finish the first song. Before they start the second song, I just start yelling at the singer. Like, hey, Jay, hey! And I'm waving my trumpet in the air at him because I had talked to him, and they're not into it. I said, fuck it. I walk out on stage playing the horn riff that's in the song on their record. Uninvited, borderline, because they told me no, already, right? Just like I was meant to be there. Like I was in part of the band, just walked out doing it. And he said, fuck it, let's play the song. And went into the song. They went nuts because to be fair, they don't know me from some schmuck. Like, oh, I learned it, and it's.
Where were you performing?
So this was Coach House, a venue that is unfortunately no longer here in Santa Barbara. They got destroyed, shut down, tore down years ago. So I roll out. I get to play my trumpet to the horn line of that song as their encore song. The whole band ends up, because they, again, I was about to say, they didn't know that I'm somebody that actually learned it. They're like, oh, this guy, he says he learned it. It's going to sound like shit and we're going to look terrible. I'm not going to do that. Versus I roll out and I'm like, I'm bossing that shit. Like,
I'm doing.
I know, like, that's what I was going to school for, was trumpet. So that's what I played all through school. So like, I know. And so they're like, oh, fuck it, let's do it. And so I'm out, and I know every word of the song, so I'm able to play and sing along. The band has a blast. Afterwards, it's hugs all around. Thought it was amazing. I talked to the merch guy, and he's like, dude, I've been touring with these guys for like a year and a half, and I've never seen them play that song. That was amazing. So it was like,
man, hell yeah, that's fantastic.
So yeah, that's what probably my best show memory of like playing a show and like with a band that I loved and respected. They were a part of the very first punk show I ever went to.
Oh, no shit.
The first punk show I ever went to, the opening band was called Shades Apart, and then it was the Suicide Machines and Descendants. So a hell of a first show for me. And so, yeah, all those years later, to get to not only open for them, but to share that moment, yeah, it's one of the best. One of the best.
I could definitely see why. That's fucking sick, man.
Yeah.
So, Matt, what I asked Josh was, what was his favorite performance of all time? What was most memorable about it? So,
like
same
that I
question
performed
for you.
or saw perform?
That you performed personally. Like, what was your greatest performance, and what was most memorable about it?
Shoot, I would say the first night of a tour that I had with my band was playing with Hot Water Music and Strike Anywhere, and we played at a place in San Francisco, a ballroom, and there was like 1,500 people there, and it was like the biggest crowd that I had played for at that point in time.
Mm-hmm.
And we were on tour with, two of like my favorite bands. So
huge
it was just, and it was just amazing. Like I probably left there with that gleaming smile you could see from space. Like, it was a great show. And it just kept, we played a handful of shows with them on that tour. Like it was amazing. But that first show was just burned into my memory forever.
Hell yeah. Love that. So if you guys could change something about the music industry, what would it be? Whoever wants to take it first.
Oh man.
There's so much.
Fuck. Look at it this way. You're this awesome podcast. It's available on streaming services. It's one of the staples of podcast stuff in a way. But god damn these streaming services, man. Like I hate it so much. It
makes it really hard. It's super hard as a musician. Musicians don't really get the pay that their art deserves. Like, somebody else is just, it may seem like it's crazy because when somebody buys a record, it's still $7 something or whatever, like dollars or whatnot. Mm-hmm. But the amount of money that the actual musician gets paid from that streaming service is like not even pennies. It's crazy. Like,
fractions. It's fractions of a cent per play, and we're talking like into the thousandths percent, like multiple points past the digit, or excuse me, multiple spots past the decimal point.
Fuck, man.
And I have been in there are situations where we thought we were getting screwed by the record label for getting, a quarter per record sold. So 25 cents per record sold. Like this, like nowadays with the streaming services, just blows that out of the water, like as far as disrespect is concerned.
That's ridiculous.
It's not to say that the internet isn't an amazing tool for music. I will actually defend it in the sense of like, no, with the development of the internet and home technology, you know, and programs that you can, you know, get on your computer, and like one person can at their house with all their own stuff, put an entire band together, put an entire record together, and put their music out and share it with people all over the world. That is awesome. That is amazing. A band like us can literally play in Matt's garage. You see it there. The thing that's his garage. That's where we practice. Like,
sweet setup, by the way.
In the garage, and then like you know, we record in a legit studio, but you get what I'm saying. Like we have the ability and the equipment to put an entire recording and record together in a garage, and put it all over the world and have fans and meet people. Like, so it's great. It's great, but it's the streaming service, the way that the platforms are set up in terms of monetary. Yes, like I said, they are not getting what it deserves. I'm not talking like I won't get paid, like and have extravagant nonsense. Like, no, like art is underappreciated across the board. I don't care what it is. Art is not paid for and appreciated in that way it should be. So like, it's like, in a way, like, yeah, it is fuck you, pay me. I mean, a little bit, but it's the devaluing of the experience of music. That's what gets me. You know, the experience of you bought a record, whether a record, a cassette, a CD, and that was all there was, right? It was a physical thing. You held it in your hand. You went home. You put it into a physical device of some kind. And chances are you sat down and you read through those lyrics. Probably the first half dozen times you listened to that thing. That's an experience you had with that music. That was you learning about the music, the band, the record, all of it, the whole total package, a tangible thing in your hand. Even with that tangibility, there's a memory of, okay, I was waiting for the record to come out. I went down to the store. I waited in line. I bought it. Or for me, what I really feel strongly about live music, I bought this. I went and saw this band live. I bought this piece of music from them at the show. And then
from the band. So then you listen to the song and you're transported back to when you saw that song live. You have it physical in your hand, that like the smell, the sight, like the things that are connected to our memories, right? And it enriches that experience versus a quick thing you hear and then connected to low attention spans, you zipped onto the next thing and then you zip the next, and there's not, I mean, there's always exceptions. And I don't mean and I don't mean to make broad strokes again. It's all, and again, my opinion. But I think it takes away from that, and there's a connectivity that's lost. And I think that goes hand in hand with just technology, society,
and capitalism,
medias, and capital. Yeah, exactly. All of it. Like, you know, extreme individualism. You know, and how that actually isn't a unifying characteristic, unfortunately, for us to share. You know, I mean, if we can get started on that one, right? So that's a rabbit hole in itself. Yeah, so that's one of my big things, you know, just like what I could change. I don't necessarily have a great answer. I will always say too, like, these are my opinions. Just because I have my opinion, I also admit I don't necessarily have a solution or a great alternative. I still am entitled to say this may not be great, but I will also admit, take it with a grain of salt, because I don't have a better solution other than go see a band live, buy their music live from them or from their Bandcamp, because even if it's digital, the band's getting it, and then you're enriching it. You're empowering that band to do more for themselves, and then thusly that will do more for the people that want to hear from them. They can write more music, put out more music. You know, you want to wear a shirt and support your band. There you go. They finally were able to buy merch that you could pick up, you know, or support or whatever. You know, right. All the things. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's been the best with like the Bandcamp Fridays and stuff, where like everything, like all proceeds go to like the bands themselves and like everything. Like it's pretty rad.
Yeah. It's a great alternative. So that's where, like, in terms of a streaming service or whatever, that is a major great alternative to also not wanting to go along with the program of the big corporations. I mean, we admit it, like, our shit's on Spotify and Apple and Amazon, and I mean,
so I got an
iPhone. Yeah. I mean, you know,
like you said, it's a good tool, especially for us. Like we had started this band
you know, in like 2018 or whatever. And when we had went to put out our first record, when we were done with like being happy with our, what material we had, the pandemic hit. So what were we to do? You can't tour with it. You can't, you know, so it was actually a really good tool in that respect of being able to like help kickstart, you know, get things out to people across the globe and not just in your neck of the woods, you know.
Absolutely.
So there is something to say about that, but like, I mean, as far as, you know, raping the artist, that's for certain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's quite a few other things. There's quite a few other things that we
absolutely. There's a long list.
There's for sure, you know, but that would be the easiest one, I think. And that's not just because of the timing that it happens to be a hot topic right now in the media, obviously in the last couple of weeks, you know, or on again, off again, but more recently, very, very hot topic. As we're talking about it, it's like coincidentally, like, yeah, I mean, top down, man. I mean, these are mega huge famous people, you know, with all the money in the world and all the opportunities in the world. And then you got a band like us, and then you got, you know, then you got the one person in their home doing it for themselves. Like, in a way, we, in that sense, same boat.
Right.
It's just, it's interesting, the timing. That's all. Yeah, who knows? And as Matt said too, I mean, of course I said go out to a band, get their shit in person. Like, of course the pandemic and all this stuff is hopefully a once in a lifetime event, you know, that we have to endure and continue enduring and hopefully see the back end of, and how it's changed thereafter. And hopefully we can get back to that. So again, I don't mean to say be reckless, do things you're not comfortable with. No, you get what I'm saying. Again, painting with broad strokes is the idea, not to say like, you know, okay, if you don't really want to go right out to a show right now, it's okay. I don't be mad at you.
We'll be here for when you're ready.
Yeah, we're going to keep
Bandcamp Friday.
We just getting started, so there's going to be time for sure.
Cool. Really well said, guys. So what are your favorite and your least favorite music styles?
Matt?
I would have to say bits and pieces of jazz are my least favorite. There's like some like dirty jazz where they're like, oh, but it's, you know, it's the notes that we're not playing that's like the song, and I'm like, it just sounds like trash, dude. Please just don't play the notes. Don't play music, period. You know what I mean? Like, some jazz is all right. It's very like, you know, but like it's hard for me to bag on that kind of stuff, like, because again, it goes back to that artist aspect, like that you love it. Like, you know, that's your release. That's where you're like, you know, you're comfortable in that, whatever. Like, so can't really bag it in that aspect, but it just, I prefer to not have it in my jukebox. Like that's a better way of saying it. And then my favorite is, it would have to be punk rock, you know, skate punk. Like, this is, it's my go-to every day. Doesn't matter, like the mood. I go to punk rock. Like, so.
Yeah, and I mean, absolutely the same. I mean, punk. Punk is my favorite. It's.
Wait, you're telling me a couple of punk rockers' favorite music is punk? What?
No. Man, it's it's easy.
I enjoy ska.
No, I mean, again, I love tons of stuff. I listen to so much stuff, and again, I listen to so much more music now over the years than I ever have. My palette has expanded tremendously. So yeah, punk is always going to be the bread and butter, the number one. However, a little bit different than Matt, and what I can't stand, or it's just like, ugh. I can hang with the jazz. I mean, like, you know, trumpet player, did a lot of jazz, so I live in that realm a little bit more. But there is some bad jazz, like, no doubt. There's just bad jazz. But I am not a fan of electronic music really at all. I mean, I can't think of hardly any electronic music of any kind that I could think that I like or is good. It's not my bag, you know? Now, I will, with that being said, there are people that I will give a little bit more respect to from, again, solely based from my tastes, that I will give them respect. I'm like, okay, you did a lot of pioneering and or like brought certain things out, you know, or like did things in ways that others maybe didn't, you know. And like if it was playing in the background kind of thing, like, oh, like, I don't hate that. That I don't have
Dude,
to
you're
like
the
turn that off, you know, like Fat. Okay, and I'll put about Fat Boy Slim. Fat Boy Slim, for example, electronic music that like if that was in the background, like I wouldn't like run to turn it off and be like, what the fuck? Who put this shit on? But you know, so like an example. But yeah, yeah.
You'd be like, dude, you're the Sean White of the synthesizer.
Yeah. So yeah, that and just so yeah, and so like noise, electronic based stuff too. So whether it's electronic noise or like a lot of like you see like hardcore and death metal folks do a lot of like dark noise and that kind of stuff. No thanks. Y'all are doing a great job, but I'm gonna pass. Thanks.
It looks good on you though.
Yeah.
No, you do you, boo. All day, every day. You do you. I'm gonna.
Yeah, and I think you can totally have appreciation for what musicians do without liking their personal music.
Of course.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's another thing too.
For sure.
Yeah, like that's another interesting thing is you see what music someone creates, and then I think it's always a great conversation. Like, well, what do you actually like to listen to? And of course, there'll be those staples of similar what they're playing. But then it's neat to get into those like, okay, like I didn't expect to hear you say that, or I didn't expect to hear you say that. Like that's where the conversations can get real fun on influences and like, oh, what about this record? Oh, what about that record? Or have you heard so and so? Like that's where you get into those. Yeah, like I said, it can get real fun. And you're like, oh, really? Wouldn't have expected that from you, you know?
Yeah, totally.
Well, like so, I was in a studio at one point in time with one of the engineer that was recording us was a good friend of Mark from Guttermouth, and he was like, dude, he's like super into Frank Sinatra. And I was like, whoa, that's kind of, I didn't really expect to hear that like from the singer of Guttermouth. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It was just kind of like, that was an awkward one. Like you're saying, Josh.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's always kind of a trip. But it's cool at the same time, right? Like it not kind of
it's
off.
So cool.
I got some Frank Sinatra records.
Fuck yeah. I do too.
Yeah.
You guys sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. I think I might have one in my collection too, as you say that. Either if it's not a Frank, it might be like a Dean Martin, something like that.
I've got Bing Crosby too.
I definitely have. I know I have a Bing Crosby. I couldn't say which one, but I know for a fact I got one. I kind of inherited from someone else's collection that kind of came my way.
And it's funny, like I'd have to dig it out, but I have a Sammy Davis Jr. Dean Martin record in here somewhere too.
Oh, the Rat Pack? Hell yeah.
Yeah, pretty classic.
Yeah.
So do you guys primarily make music for yourselves or for your fans?
I'd have to say for myself. Like as far as like my when I'm going into like my creative process and like whatever, I don't really think about what people want to hear. Like I try to especially lately with this band, I try to challenge myself. Like I just it's it's for me basically. Like I am beyond stoked and feel like mega privileged that like anybody wants to listen to like what we're creating. Mm-hmm. But yeah, like I try to do it for me. Like we're all for the four of us, I guess I should say, for the benefit of the band.
Yeah. Nothing wrong with
Definitely
that at all.
Yeah. I mean, there are moments when you're writing where it's like, okay, we're writing this like on a technical aspect. You're like, okay, we're going to play it this way because that's the way we can play it cleanly. And so it sounds good so that we're happy with how we sound. But then that also means the fans will enjoy us not sounding like shit, trying to play something we can't play. So
it's like an added benefit.
Yeah, it's like, okay. And then if it comes after the fact, then so be it. But yeah, we're writing what we want to write. And yeah, like I said, if people gravitate to it and connect to it, then awesome.
Dude, they'd probably want to hear a fucking
dude, that was so sick.
We gotta convince one of the guitar players to play bass on a song. Then if you want to do that, but I've
people fucked up enough, right?
Ain't happening. I know. I ain't doing that.
It'll be like that dirty jazz shit, It made sense to us at the time.
I took this history of classic rock class when I was in like community college, and they were talking about Jerry Garcia from the Grateful Dead. And they have this famous
Neat.
story about Jerry Garcia, where apparently you guys might have heard this being musicians, but I guess he had a nightmare one night, and basically what was happening in his nightmare was they were performing and they were just rocking out, and everybody was loving it, and then all of a sudden, like, all the drugs wore off for everyone at the exact same time. And then so everybody just kind of started looking around, and then they started screaming at him on the stage saying, "You guys fucking suck." And then his like career was over.
Oh, wow. I mean, wow.
Fantastic.
Yeah. I mean,
Maybe that's why they
not
kept
be
supplying
wrong.
so many drugs.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, deadheads, dude. Shit.
It's real.
Oh, that's
That was
classic.
real.
That was or maybe we should start supplying drugs.
Well, I mean, we did talk about making our own rolling papers. So,
Oh, this
That
is
would be
true.
rad. I
Yeah.
would buy some.
Yeah.
well, we
And
were jokingly like,
I mean, yeah.
we were jokingly
Go
like,
ahead,
hey, we're gonna get rolling papers made with like our logo on it or something like that. And it's like, oh yeah, and then a free little something with every purchase, you know. So we can avoid like, oh, we're just giving that away, but you bought the rolling papers, hey, you know, like.
Oh, that's great. So I wanted to ask you guys now about your recent albums. You released 2 albums in the last 2 years. 2020 is A Beaten Path and 2021 is A Broken Road. Can you talk a little bit more about those records and what went into the creative process of producing them?
Sure. Well, like I said, it's they're the first collection, the first chapters of songs that we wrote in this band. It's a good introduction, if you will, in terms of here we are. This is the style of punk rock you're going to expect to hear out of this band. An introduction of who we are as people in the content, a little bit of lyrics and what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
The production, the first record, we are a 3-piece on that record. Just myself, Matt, and TJ. That record, and we recorded both records at the same place. We recorded in Ventura at Castaway 7 Studios with JP. Awesome dude. We love him. Love the work he's done with us. And
Amazing.
many others. Yeah, great guy. He does great work. Tons of people are into it. Yeah, like I said, awesome. So yeah, that album was recorded. Almost all of it was recorded in one weekend. He set up Friday night, crank through Saturday, Sunday, 8-hour days, and we had most of it done. There were a couple of visits afterwards to add a couple of vocal things, a couple little noodles here on guitar, here or there, a couple of those little extra ditty things, but bulk of it was done in a weekend. Then it was sent to another individual to be mixed and mastered for us, Chris Hess, who runs Lighthouse Recording Studios down in Los Angeles. That's who did our mixing and mastering, again, for both records. Magician. Between JP and Chris, those two guys and us as a combination, like we're the music and the recordings and the albums are amazing. Like we're so happy. JP's recording environment is amazing, and then what Chris was able to do in making it sound. When we got our tracks back from him, we're like, "Holy shit, we want to sound that good? What?"
Who'd you get to re-record our shit?
Yeah, right. Like, but it's not like things are faked. If you listen to our albums and you come see us live, you're gonna get very, very accurate representation. It's not like it's a bunch of overproduced this, that, whatever. But it was just we didn't think it could sound that good, being just a punk band that had been playing what we've been doing up to that point. Then, like Matt said, we put out that album during shutdown time, and then since we couldn't tour in support of it and play shows live, couldn't do a lot of other things. We're a brand new band starting out. We're like, well, let's just keep on trucking, and kept writing and kept rehearsing. We added an additional second guitar player during those times. And so half of the material on the second album was written as a 4-piece and recorded as a 4-piece. There are some songs on the second album that were recorded as a part of the first album, but were never released. And pretty much the same thing. We have been able to play a little bit more in this time, with COVID and restrictions and stuff being not quite as strict last year through 2021. And we're supposed to have a release show for that album back in November, and that got canceled due to COVID, unfortunately, 3 days before the show. The venue had to cancel on us. There were folks there that had been exposed, and they didn't know who, and so they were in full plug. And so now here we are, fast forward, and 1 month from today, we are revisiting that and having our record release party. So it's exactly. Yeah, so like you said, recording and production, literally start to finish of how those albums kind of started, just practically, technically speaking, like recorded all the through to being released. As far as more like in the bands, I said, canonically, whatever. Trying to talk comic books in stores. What's canon? Canonically? I can't say words. The same kind of thing. It's a chronicling the evolution of the band. A beaten path, starting off as we are on this. Like many people, we find that we're walking a road and we get to where we think the end of the road is, but it's just another version of the beginning of that. And
which was the purpose of artwork.
We tried
the first one with the open door, basically to exactly where we're at. Like you got to this door, like what's on the door? Well, still got a long way to go. You beat this path, you still got a long way to go.
And then a broken road basically being the continuation of that. So in the chapter of the band, adding a new member, so essentially in a way like breaking things down and then starting up in a new formation. So, a little more literal in that one, it's a broken road, but, and just, the travels and the continuation of that journey. And we wanted them to be complementary. So that's where the artwork is similar. The graphics are similar. Pardon me. And yeah, like it kind of marks, those are the first two big chapters of the band. Like, here we are, this is what we're doing. Get ready. Cause this is just the prologue, if you will. And where we will probably see ourselves here in the next record and beyond is definitely now you're into the book that is going to be written about what Last Point can do, hopefully.
Super cool. That makes sense how you guys did it like chronologically, and especially how you explained that. It all really connects well. Do you have any messages for your fans?
Be fucking cool to each other.
Don't be a dick.
Don't be a
dick. Yes, don't be a dick.
Yeah.
That's well, sure. Be a good human being. I guess if I could say just more directly associated like our music, what we're talking about contextually and things like that. Think. Close your mouth.
Think is a good one.
Your ears. Think.
Think.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Look, close your mouth and open your ears for a couple of moments for any number of reasons, and you would be amazed at what the world or people will share with you and that you will pick up on. The content, some of our stuff is very literal, we like your content again, where I felt like when I saw your content, I'm like, okay, this is very appropriate. This is somebody that's going to get what we're talking about. Like, we have a song, discussing organized religion and how, maybe not so good, to put it lightly. One example. And again, opinion. We have material talking about cannabis and the ridiculous discrimination there is against cannabis. And obviously, as you know, in terms of content more relevant, crime, incarceration, the ridiculous bullshit that exists. Just smoke some weed, man. Why are we in jail for but you can get fall down, pass out drunk. You can drug overdose from shit your doctor gave you. That's all okay and or encouraged. Don't you dare smoke a joint. Song. So really, some of these are like, a song that discusses, kink sexual activity and sexual orientations. All of these, so like I said, some things are more literal in context, some of them are more interpretive. We like to really discuss the human condition and the human experience of living and in
the
that
individuality.
Yeah. And in that, some of our material is more like very specific, and it's like, okay, it's very obvious what you're talking about. And some of it's more interpretive, where it's like, well, that can mean 2 or 3 different things. So that's where, like I said, to get a little more specific with that, I wanted to kind of talk about that was because my first thing, just listen for a minute. Somebody might say something you haven't heard, or share a thought, or put words to a thought or an emotion that you haven't been able to find for yourself, that then changes a situation for you, And
well,
I'm not trying to say,
I'm
not saving lives, man, but you get what I'm saying. Like, I'm trying not to, I don't want to seem grandiose or big head or anything like that. You know what I mean? I'm just trying to.
No, but like more people should look at like disagreement as like not like an area for argument, but like more like an area for discussion. You know what I mean? Like
discourse and
everybody's
discussion.
Everybody's different, so like just listening to everybody else's point of views rather than trying to force your point of view is like opens up a bigger, broader, like, area for everybody to just be like understanding and see where everybody's coming from. So like, but then, it all boils down to just like, if we could all do that, you won't be a fucking dick.
Yeah. Open communication, man.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
What advice, if any, could you offer for upcoming musicians or people out there who are interested in becoming musicians themselves?
Don't struggle on trying to impress.
Hell yeah. Yeah.
Don't worry too much about what other people think.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Definitely.
And that was like what drew me to the punk rock scene to begin with, was the whole like, again, going back to individuality, but like not giving a fuck what anybody else thought. Like, do it. Do it for you, and those along the lines of, again, don't be a dick, but be you, be like, so don't worry about, you'll be happiest if you're doing it for you,
right.
What I mean? Like, so it's just that's, I mean,
save every penny you possibly can, because music equipment is expensive.
Yes.
Everything in life. Fuck.
I've always made the joke, especially like punk and hardcore.
And if you plan on doing it in the punk rock industry, like you'll need even more money to save because you'll never make money.
No, so I'd say like more so like it always seems like, okay, like, punk rock and hardcore, a lot of like more working class, lower income, or like folks that, we're doing it because we love it. And it's like, man, why is it that like the brokest people decided to take on one of the most expensive hobbies or interests that you possibly could? Not only just music equipment, but then like, practice space rentals and things if you have to, and then traveling and going on tour. Like, oh, good God. Like, yeah.
I mean, but is there anything cool that's cheap anymore? Like, nothing's cheap.
No, not really. I mean,
shit, like going to the grocery store, like barely get anything, and that's like $200.
Right. Yeah. I learned pretty early on, like that when we did, do tours, like we all pitched in and did a huge, like, Costco run or whatever, and then took a little barbecue with us, like. So you made sandwiches and you did little barbecue parking lot barbecues, or whatever, to save money.
A loaf of bread and a jar of peanut butter gets you through a lot of shows and a lot of days if you need to, man. You know what I mean?
You want a bean pie?
Right?
Can of beans and a fucking giant stack of tortillas? That'll go a long way too.
Hell yeah. Your other bandmates might get mad at the smell in the van, but hey, you ain't hungry no more.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
Poor man's spaghetti with the top ramen and some ketchup.
Yeah. There you go. So how can people find your guys' music, and do you have any upcoming shows or announcements?
Josh, take that.
Okay, yeah.
Josh is the robot.
Yeah, plug your shit, Josh.
Yeah.
How can people find you?
Well, as I said earlier, we are available on all streaming platforms, so you can just simply search Last Point on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, Pandora. I mean, you name it, iHeartRadio. I mean, you name it, we're out there in terms of streaming services. Also on Bandcamp, you can check us out there. And then as far as shows, yes, we have quite a few things happening. As I mentioned a bit earlier, we have our rescheduled record release party. That is happening on March 12th, exactly 1 month from today.
That record's on Allegedly Records, by the way.
Yes, the second record there, A Broken Road. We were able to join the family of Alleged Records. They've done a great job with us and been amazing support for us.
You can find us there as well.
Yep, their website, allegedlyrecords.com, has our album available there. A lot of other albums from a lot of other really good bands on the roster. Merchandise from all of us as well. So options to support in many different ways with that. We also have merch available on Bandcamp as well. So in addition to the music, you can get pretty much all the swag stuff too. And then, yeah, shows. Like I said, the release show, that's going to be the 12th. That is going to be at Old Town Coffee out in Goleta. We're going to be joined by Lost Issue, rad LA punk band, and Loke Dogs, another band here from Santa Barbara area. And then after that, we have a show. It is on April 16th. These are both Saturdays. We're playing up in not San Luis Obispo, up in Arroyo Grande at the Humdinger Brewing. We are lucky enough we're going to be opening up for Pulley, direct support for them. We're also going to be joined by the Kegels and the Diseased for that show. And then lastly, in terms of stuff that's actually booked for us, we actually have a 5-day run happening at the end of May. The last weekend of May, we're going to be going out on the road with an awesome band, Vacant Skies, a band from Arizona. They're going to be coming through, and we're going to be playing I believe the first date is the 26th. The 27th. It's a Friday. That's going to be the first gig. That's going to be here in Isla Vista at the Bico Co-op. Then the next night, we're going to be down in Ventura at Gigi's. And then the night after that, we're going to be down in LA. Night after that, we're going to be at Fullerton at Program Skate and Sound, an amazing skate shop venue, a staple for tons of touring bands. I'm super excited to play there. And then the fifth night, we're going to be down in San Diego. So we're doing, like I said, that's going to be the 27th. I think we're up to the 31st or the 1st there, however many days that is. Yeah, that's the stuff we actually have on the books. We are definitely going to have a lot more show announcements coming here along the way. Obviously, as restrictions are starting to open up again, more places are allowing people to play. We're going to be doing a lot more traveling. We're crossing our fingers that by the summertime, we get to do kind of a whole West Coast loop. A couple of weeks, we're going to go all the way up to Washington and back down, and possibly maybe even head to the Midwest more in the fall. We have lots of aspirations, like I said, to go there, and then possibly either the fall or even the spring of next year, hitting the East Coast. Our label has able to help us out with a lot of connections in that area as well. So yeah, there's, as we mentioned a few moments ago, like we're really, like I said, the first couple chapters of the band, we're the prologue, we're closing that. We're getting into the meat and potatoes here. We're really going to start kicking off and hopefully be able to do a lot more. And of course, another album. You know, when all of this that we're talking with shows and everything else, as soon as we have new material that we are writing. It's in the very, very early stages, but there is new material and another album. I mean, I would say probably a year or less, you'll probably be getting another album from us. Full steam ahead, as they say, pedal to the metal.
I like in my own, I mean, just to like, again, I'm shooting this out there, but I like this every year thing that we've been doing. So if we could potentially keep writing and pump out an album every year, that would be epic.
Yeah. Like every 12 to 18 months right now, cranking out music for us is absolutely a reasonable time frame. I mean, there's enough material that are in the demos. We have enough material in the demo stages right now to make up an 8 to 10 song album.
Hell yeah.
And like I said, that's, like I said, just stuff in the demo stages. So from those, we probably will end up with like 10 to 12 for the next album, like 8, 10, 12, kind of getting a little bit more material on each of the albums. We don't necessarily want to exhaust and do too long of an album. Attention spans, they are what they are. And like I said, for us, like Matt said, let's put out albums in that like 10, 12, 10, 13 song range and just keep cranking them out every year and a half versus putting out a big one and then you don't do anything for like 2 or 3 years that's new. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like we're definitely
Plus it's deeper cuts on the vinyl. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
So the songs will sound better if we stay in that 10 song range.
That's very true. Well, if we could get vinyl pressed with the way the vinyl world situation is, good lord. Have you heard
We'll
of
stay
these
hopeful.
situations?
No.
Well, labels and bands worldwide, due to supply chain shortages, pick a thing that's not where it should be when it should be there. But there are massive delays. So like all kinds of labels and bands, like all their release schedules and stuff have been, it's been hectic. You follow on the internet, you see stuff and it's just like, oh man, I feel so bad for like every other day you're seeing it. Like we're talking like 9 to 11 month lead times on vinyl production. So for like bands and labels trying to put out an album and have stuff ready to go to support for a tour or otherwise, like, oh, good. I feel so bad for the bands that are at that level. We're hoping that we can get to that level with some of the very soon things we're looking to do.
Right.
So it's like, yeah, I'm hoping for a headache soon. But I mean, again, the empathy, like, man, it's a struggle, and maybe we'll get lucky. And by the time we've got ourselves to that level, some of these things will smooth out, and we can take advantage of some of those things that other bands are struggling with right now. So,
Well, thanks so much, guys, for coming on. I had a blast talking with you.
yeah,
Thanks
this
for
was a
having
great
us.
time. I really like this format. It's a little different than some of the other podcast stuff that we've done. It was some interviews or different things here or there over time. I like this one. This was really casual and really comfortable. And you're a good moderator, good questions. Like I said, some of your questions were very insightful, so that was really nice. And hey, I said folks to think out there, you made me think a couple times there with my responses to you. So hats off to you there. Good job.
Well, thanks so much, guys. Have a great rest of your night.
Hell
Right
yeah.
on YouTube, bud.
Stay safe.
Talk
out
to you
there.
soon. Alrighty. Bye.
As always, the 805 Uncensored is on Twitter, at 805 Uncensored on Instagram, at 805 Uncensored Pod on YouTube, at 805 Uncensored Podcast as well. Also, if you have any episode or guest suggestions for me, feel free to send me an email at 805uncensored@gmail.com. Thanks, everybody. Have a good one. Peace out. Hey guys, real quick, I just wanted to take a quick second to tell you about the show's awesome sponsor, Anchor. Back in 2019, when I started this podcast, I didn't know much about podcasting at all. Luckily, I came across Anchor. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free, it has built-in creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you, so it can also be heard on all the major platforms, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more. You can also make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started now.